lights are mysterious from somewhere in the universe. Planets and quasars with all kinds of hidden mysteries in the galaxy. NASA hiding secrets and astronauts discovering things. Mysterious societies from a far-along galaxy. Societies on Earth that have been destroyed with their own hidden secrets. Mysterious objects that surface from nowhere and yet are unexplained on how to use. Whole temples full of ruins, secrets, and hidden treasures. And most of all, objects from outer space that come with visitors that only want one thing. You're watching Hidden Truths.
Hello, and welcome once again to Hitting the Truth. And today we're going to talk about a man that was abducted by aliens who disappeared for 10 days and has a big, elaborate story. And this thing is 100% supposed to be real, the story. And, we're just going to get into it. I'm reviewing it, dissecting it, and tearing it apart, and I'm throwing it at you. It comes from another channel, so it's all fair use. Anything that I'm trying to do is fair use to explain what I see as fact, truth, or falsehood and fraud. And so let's get into it. So this is a video. I know you guys seen this guy from Ancient Aliens. I actually hate that show. I used to really like it, and then there was something about it started pissing me off. It was like when I watched the one with the Japanese sword being made, and I was like, this is crap, because this just seems like they make a human seem so dumb. And then later on I see a YouTube video saying the same damn thing, that they believe that, they make it seem like humans are just ignorant beings. So it's like, it's not hard to pick up. Even if you didn't watch the YouTube video about it, or even hear me now talking about it, if you watch Ancient Aliens, just pay attention. They make it seem like we can't create nothing on our own. Well, how do you explain all the technological advances we made ever since the time we actually met these aliens? So that's it. That's what I'm getting with, and we're gonna get into this. Okay, so let's just get into this video. So pretty much what this video is, before I really just jump into it, it's a video of this guy or a story pretty much of this guy who got abducted. It's a true thing that happened. This guy wasn't in America, he was in Europe. And it actually reminds me of another story, which I'm going to talk about in another video coming up. And yeah, I just want to know, is this real? Has this happened to many people? And if it has happened, can people leave me comments and things and let me know? So let's get into it.
The one piece of evidence that I've always said we need in order to prove the ancient astronaut theory.
Imagine leaving home for a simple 3-hour drive, only to return 10 days later with no memory of where you've been. That's exactly what happened to Alec Newold. His shocking claim? He was abducted by aliens, lived among them for over a week, and returned with proof so unsettling that authorities tried to silence him. What did Alec really see? Were his memories authentic or planted? And why did intelligence agencies suddenly take such a keen interest in him? Today, we'll unravel his story, his so-called evidence, and the extraordinary secrets he revealed. The day Alec vanished. On February 1989, Alec Newold left his hometown of Rotorua, New Zealand.
No, never mind. New Zealand's on the other side of the globe. So I thought it was Europe. It's been a minute since I watched the video. But still, this is interesting. A guy that made national attention or global attention to where world leaders are compelled by his story. It's quite... I don't know, because you got a lot of people talk about alien abductions and stuff, but it's quite unique how his story, out of other people's stories, actually gets people's attention, is what I'm trying to say. Because, I mean, anybody can say, oh, I got abducted by an alien and they put metal, shrapnel in my body or something, whatever the crap. But this guy, story actually gets world or global attention. It's very, very interesting.
Intending to make a simple drive north to Auckland. It was a trip he had made many times before. A journey of about 3 hours by car. He carried no luggage, no grand plan, just the expectation of arriving at his destination the same afternoon. But when Alec finally returned, it wasn't hours later. It was 10 days later. And in those 10 days, he had no memory of what had happened to him, nor any explanation for why he was allegedly missing. Imagine the shock of his family and friends who had reported him missing after his failure to arrive. The police had been drawn into the mystery, launching a search for his car and any trace of his whereabouts. To them, this wasn't a man who had wandered off voluntarily. This was a disappearance that defied reason. When Alec finally appeared again, he was greeted not with relief alone, but with a mixture of disbelief, suspicion, and overwhelming curiosity. To those who knew him, the man who returned seemed the same, and yet not quite the same. Neighbors and relatives were stunned. "Where have you been?" they asked him. The police wanted answers as well. Alec himself was confused by the intensity of the response. To him, the trip had been continuous. He had gotten into his car, begun the drive, and then, in what felt like no more than a blink, found himself again in Auckland. It wasn't until he looked around, saw the crowd that had gathered, and heard the voices of people saying he had been gone for 10 full days, that the enormity of the situation struck him. The physical toll was evident.
So, I mean, that's odd, but there's stories like that where people will be taken away or missing or something, and they show up somewhere else, and either they have amnesia or something of what happened. You never see them again, of course. That's the main one. But then there's people like that that come back and they say, well, this happened, or I was in another dimension, or something of that nature. Something odd like this type of story makes you think, is people, how can I put it in a certain way? Is people able to mentally project themselves into a different place? There's this thing where I forget the science behind it. There's a scientific theory behind someone, let's say, like if you move forward and backwards constantly in one spot, that sooner or later that you can phase out of existence or phase through the ground or whatnot. I've heard this before. Someone said it scientifically to me, and I can't really remember exactly how it goes down. But the thing about it is, can the mind project you in another world, project you out of reality, and be able to put you back where you were in a different time, like ahead of time, or days ahead of time, or a week ahead of time? I know this is supposed to be about alien abduction, but maybe that's plausible as well. Just saying.
Alec complained of terrible headaches that wouldn't subside, a persistent tiredness that made even simple tasks difficult, and a strange inability to focus. These weren't the signs of a man who had simply hidden away for a few days. It was as though his body had endured an ordeal beyond his comprehension, even if his conscious mind could not recall it. At first, Alec could offer no explanation. He had no story to give the police, no timeline to reconstruct, and that only deepened the mystery. His alleged missing car was another question mark. Some said it was never accounted for in the official record. Others claimed it was found, though Alec himself could not clearly recall what had happened to it. What he did know was that his reality had fractured. Time for him had passed in the blink of an eye, while for everyone else, he had been gone 10 days.
Now, I'm a little confused because they said that the car itself, they don't recall the car, being in the story or whatever. But it's like, how did he even? I mean, he was driving, and then he was gone for 10 days, and when his memory restored, he's still driving, and he got to whatever his destination was, and people were like, "You've been gone for 10 days." So it's like, where was the car? Is the car there? Or maybe I'm just feeding one little tiny, picking at that one little part, because it doesn't make sense to me what they just said compared to what was being said just a minute ago. So I don't know, but I'm not saying I doubt the story at all. I'm just saying that makes sense out of it when it comes to him being put back into society after he was supposedly abducted. Like, even before leaving society and being put back into it, make it make sense. That's all I'm saying.
The local community buzzed with speculation. Some whispered that he had suffered a mental breakdown. Others believed foul play might be involved. Still others pointed to the uncanny strangeness of his reappearance as proof of something beyond explanation. In the late 1980s, New Zealand was not accustomed to UFO lore and abduction stories in the mainstream. Alec's situation seemed like the stuff of science fiction, yet here he was, a flesh and blood man standing in front of them, unable to explain where he had been.
Where do they find these? I mean, obviously it's a stock footage, like this one right here. I've seen it in the editing system before, but come on, where do they find these people to do these little stupid interactions, and how much do they get paid? It's got to be like, oh, let's give them $100 for the day to pretend to be this fake cop and whatever the hell. I don't know.
Then the fragments began to surface. Not immediately, but slowly, like memories leaking back into consciousness after a dream. At first, mere flashes, disjointed images, sensations of lightness, weightlessness, and otherworldly presence.
So let's think about this, okay? Disjointed images. You hear about that a lot. Not as much as the lights, sensitivity to lights and stuff. You hear about that all the time in alien abductions. There's always some kind of light. Now, that's the number one sign to me of an alien abduction. Weightlessness is another one where they say they feel like they floated up, or they feel their body is hovering over a table or something. I've heard that one before. Unworldliness, or outer worldliness, or whatever. That one could be used for so many different things. So it's like, how do you know we feel out of the world, outer worldliness? What does that really mean? Does it mean he doesn't feel like he's on Earth, or does it mean that he feels like he's not part of the world now? He's part of something else. Not like when I say part of something else, like he doesn't feel like he's part of the world. Like, does his body feel like it's no longer earthbound? If that makes sense to you, So I don't know.
Alec learned to fight them again, contending with the reality that these were nothing but hallucinations emitted by his mind. Slowly but steadily, they formed an edifice of narrative. Those about him saw a withdrawn young man who was quietly wrestling with an unexpressed bond that had begun manifesting way before. The headaches continued, as did the fatigue. It appeared to be caught in a state of resigning itself to being viewed by the world, while there was an inner world buried deep inside.
So see, this whole worldly thing is what I'm tripping on. The inner world and the outer world. So the outer world being outside people, being, society himself. Inner world inside him, a world that he's used to, that he's comfortable with, that he knows as reality. So it's like, and then there's the, like you said, otherworldly influence that he has from being involved with aliens. So this guy's not just a part of the one thing. He's part of 3 different worlds in his mind and reality. One being the alien abduction world, the human world, and then his inner turmoil. It's a little heavy, man. At least that's what I'm thinking.
Inside his mind, and into that inner world, only he knew something had happened with profound meaning between those 10 lost days.
That was a clip from, I have to say, it's a clip from freaking Doctor Strange. It's all right.
But he was not going to let that happen. He had to let those memories, how the actual beginning would emerge, continue pressing against the frontiers of his awareness. But as the pieces of his memory returned, what Alec described would shock not just his family.
Look at this guy on the couch here. He's looking at him like crazy and shit. Like, what the hell? And if this is the dude right here, okay, so you can just tell he's telling a big story and he's getting really into it, going like this. But this guy over here, he's just like, what the hell are you talking about? What the hell? Some people get stuck on a way of thinking and they don't see outside their mind. And this is something I've been saying for a minute, is that there's people out there that don't have imaginations. There's people out there that can't fantasize. There's people out there who can't have any inner monologue. They don't hear themselves talk in their head. And so they're just like constantly running their mouths or doing something they don't know what the hell you're talking about. They have never had deep thought. That's another thing that's really an issue with a lot of people. There's people out there that don't deeply think about things. They don't deeply think about their lives. They don't deeply think about, whatever it is. It could be religion, it could be business, it could be, I don't know, just like health. They don't deeply think about any of these things. And so when someone else is talking deeply about it, they're either shocked or compelled to listen and try to understand. But these people are the same people who don't understand about imagination, having an inner monologue, like I said, deep thought. So when they hear things, it blows their mind, and you get this dumbfounded look at this guy over here. That's just my point of view.
Family, but the entire world. The alien encounter begins.
So before we get into this alien encounter thing, we have to analyze what's happened so far. Okay? So let's talk about it. So, let's think about what just happened so far, what we heard. Okay, this guy driving along, out of nowhere, aliens come, swoop him up, and he doesn't know, he just feels like well, they didn't even say aliens swooped him up yet. They said he was driving around, and all of a sudden, when he finally got to his other destination, people were shocked, and they're like, oh my God, he's been gone for 10 days. So somewhere in his journey, which was probably supposed to be a day or an hour, who knows, right? He was gone for 10 days. And somewhere in there, people came together, started probably searching for him. People probably was like, whoa, where's this guy at? He's probably a friendly old guy that everyone knows, like the old guy in the neighborhood, everyone's like, hey, how you doing? To make sure they look out for him and they talk about him because he said something funny or, helped out a family by giving them something, that they needed. One of those old guys, And then, I guess in the story, he wasn't old at the time because they're saying he was young, but clearly what we see in this video is an old man. Pictures of old men, images. So we can say that's what was going down. But his whole thing of feeling tired, feeling like his mind is different, and being in different worlds, human world, his interworld, and talking about otherworldly influences and stuff. There's this whole alien thing that he's starting to feel. All this separation of his being fatigued and all this stuff, okay? And it's like all this stuff that started happening to him. People think he's got a mental illness. He's the same guy, but because things happened and he was gone for 10 days, that his personality had all these little, different quirks now that made him seem very odd. And so that's where we're at, So, I don't know too much about how people act automatically when they come back from an abduction, but this is one where you got to be like, is this what happened? Is this really what's going down? You don't know. So do we know? Who knows? No one knows, but the shadow knows. Okay. so just like for reals. So yeah, what we're gonna hear next is a story of the alien contact, but then it's gonna get a little bit beyond that because you're gonna hear about what the aliens did, because they didn't do something to him, they sent him somewhere. And so this is a whole different abduction story compared to other ones, and so this is why I wanted to talk about it, because this seems like really rare of an alien story compared to people saying they went up, they got probed or something, or the aliens made them have sex or took their sperm or some crap. And I heard those ones billions of times, but this one's unique. So there we go. Alright, so here we go. Here's the other half of the story.
For days after his strange return, Alec Newell lived in a fog. The headaches persisted, his energy drained, and fragments of strange images kept rising in his mind. He tried to dismiss them at first, illusions caused by stress, or perhaps dreams that lingered too long. But they didn't fade. Instead, they sharpened until he could no longer deny that something extraordinary had happened in those allegedly missing 10 days. The first memory Alec could put into words was not of roads, cities, or even the earth at all. It was of losing his body. He described it as if his physical form had been stripped away, sifted like sand through an unseen filter, leaving only his essence behind. One moment, he was in his car. The next, his body was gone, and he drifted in a vast, boundless space. He wasn't standing, walking, or sitting. He was simply there, floating, detached, yet fully conscious. It felt like a near-death experience.
It sounds a lot like astral projection in a way. Could he have been just driving an astral project out of his body? But then if that's the case, wouldn't he be dead because he was in a car? And if you astral project out of your body, I'm pretty positive that you would get in a wreck, not unless your mind has some kind of muscle memory of how to drive, especially where you're going, and that muscle memory can actually remember the locations you're trying to go to. Yeah, I don't know. That might be a little too much and a little too confusing. But in a way, that's what it sounds like he astral projected out of his body. Somewhere he had to park and like, what his body astral project, I have no idea. But it just seems a little odd at the point of driving that you would feel this essence. So if he was abducted, then that might be a clear indication that the aliens are not just aliens, that they have some more spiritual connections, because everybody else that say they're abducted by aliens stay in their physical body. So this is an interesting story.
Or what some might call the separation of soul and flesh. He remembered looking around, though looking didn't quite describe it. He had no eyes, no physical senses, but somehow he could perceive his surroundings. The environment was immense, stretching out without walls or boundaries. A faint glow illuminated the space, soft and otherworldly, yet without any clear source. In the far distance, vague shapes began to take form, shadows at first, then distinct figures approaching. At first, Alec thought they might be spirits. Their movements were slow, graceful, almost weightless. But as they drew closer, their features came into focus, and the idea of them being human ghosts quickly dissolved. These beings were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were thin and of average human height, but their proportions were different.
So it's always this image of gray aliens with eyes and things. And you usually see that like on Star Trek, or this originally it came from a Star Trek character, and the old one with Kirk. And then later on the other shows and things, it's always gray aliens. And then, of course, the whole thing with Roswell and the alien spacecraft and the 3 aliens, and one of them was alive, that supposedly got kidnapped and put into Area 51. We all know the story. It's like an alien fairy tale that is told to American children. But the problem with it is when you start adding all these other aliens that people think they know. The Pleiadians, the reptilians, there's some kind of lava monster alien, some other type of alien that is little children, and stuff, and they're half of the grays and half human, like a human hybrid of these aliens. And there's a lot more. There's like, I guess, 4 or 5 more that are supposed to be the main types that people see all the time. So the question is, and then there was another show I watched recently, or a little video clip, not a show, where they were saying that there's 2 different types of gray aliens, the ones that are more clearer gray and the darker gray. Both of them are 4 feet tall, and then there's like some other type of thing that happens with these grays and so forth. But it's just, the whole thing is like, even if these creatures are out there, these beings, okay, like these beings, these creatures are out there, then by time now, we should have already seen them. Like, literally be a part of our society, like the show Alien Nation back in the day, you know, where this spaceship came and they landed and the humans just had to like let them work for us, work. They were trying to be part of our society in that TV show. It was a real good show, and I liked it. It was a movie first, then it was a TV show in the 80s, and then they ended up getting jobs. And then one of the TV shows and the movie, one of the aliens became a cop, and he had a human sidekick, and that was the main thing of Alien Nation. But there was like alien prostitutes on the ground, alien drug addicts, alien whatever you think you do as a human, there's an alien version of that. Okay, like a factory worker alien, and they had these heads, but they had like these marks in the head, like these little brown dots all on the heads and stuff. It was a real big thing, and it just disappeared. Kind of like how V back in the 80s was a big thing, and then it disappeared. Then it came back. They made it look cooler with special effects, but it didn't have the same impact as it did back then. There's another reason why reptilians are such a big thing is because of the V. You know, a lot of stuff that is sci-fi when it comes to aliens hit the culture so strong, the American culture so strong. I believe that it's psychotic, or not, I wouldn't say psychotic behavior, I was about to say that, but it's like more of a, how would you say it, a mass hysteria, some kind of mental mass hysteria that people have of these aliens that were once on television, and now they believe they're real. Except for I won't doubt that maybe reptilians are real. Except for not in the fact that they're from from space or something, but from Earth. Okay, and I would say that they would be earthbound because we originally had a reptilian planet. The planet was dinosaurs, dragons, and so forth, and now it's just mammals. Okay, and mostly mammals, because reptiles are still around. But it's just heavy to think that most of what we think are aliens is actually some kind of mass psychosis of television watching. And that's just the honest to God truth about it. But anyway, at least that's my opinion. And y'all can comment and say, well, no, I was abducted, or no, this and that happened. But anyway.
Their heads were larger, their eyes narrow yet deeply set, and their faces broad and smooth. There was something unsettling about them, but also something strangely familiar. Alec would later describe the moment with a mixture of awe and disbelief. These were not apparitions, not tricks of the mind. They were alive, intelligent, and watching him closely. Yet, instead of speaking with mouths or making sounds, they communicated directly into his thoughts. A voice appeared in his head, clear, calm, and deliberate. "Welcome," one of them said, though its lips did not move. "I am the designated guardian of this section. Anything you need to make your stay with us more pleasant?"
Now, if it looked like that, why would it say anything you need to make yourself look pleasant? That looks terrifying. So, so what are they trying to say here? Something like this, doing some crap like that, that's a bad image to use for what you're saying right here. It doesn't make no sense. Oh, we're going to make you feel welcome. Hi, I'm designated to help you. Well, you know, got fire all around me and shit. Oh, come sit down right here. You know, no. That's, no.
"Ask, and I shall do my best to provide." The words startled Alec. He realized then that this was not a dream. These beings were aware of him, speaking to him in a way that bypassed all language barriers. It was pure thought, flowing seamlessly between their minds.
Dude, look how terrifying these things look. And this is just them trying to explain his story by putting images to it. But the thing is, why would you pick these images? You know, why not, make something that's more, I can't say eye-pleasing, but something that's more, how can I say, comfortable to look at? Because it's like, he's talking about aliens that are inviting him, saying, hey, I'm here to help you. But yeah, you're showing an alien with fire around him, and we're supposed to believe that he's going to be, okay, yeah, I'm going to follow. It doesn't make any sense. I'm tripping on the visual effects over the story right now. Just ignore what I'm saying, forget it.
Strangely, it didn't feel invasive. Instead, it felt as though his brain had been gently tuned to their frequency. They said the unusual suit Alec now wore, to him a bright, glowing garment that had seemingly appeared on him without his putting it on. It was supposed to help him relay communications with them. It would give him understanding of their thoughts and the power to project back to them.
Okay, here we go.
His own thoughts with clarity. Despite his confusion, Alec understood what this meant. This was technology, or might be biology, so advanced that it blurred the distinction between clothing and communication. Alec could sense no antagonism from the beings, although fear coursed through him. They radiated goodwill, even curiosity. Those who had anticipated Alec's arrival and wanted him to feel comfortable with their presence. One of them pointed out that Alec was free to leave if he wanted. They didn't want to keep him against his will. Yet, they did hope that he would choose to stay, for there was much to tell him. Yet this was only the beginning. What Alec saw next was a city unlike anything on Earth. Inside the alien city, once Alec accepted that he was no longer on Earth, his surroundings began to shift. The endless, glowing void gave way to something more structured, more tangible. Slowly, he became aware of shapes in the distance. Lines, curves, and patterns that looked nothing like the towns or cities he had known back home. What emerged before his eyes was a sprawling metropolis, unlike anything humanity had ever built. The first thing that struck him was the scale. The city seemed to stretch endlessly along a coastline, its boundaries disappearing into the horizon. Even from his vantage point, Alec could see that it was vast, covering an area so immense that the largest human cities seemed like small villages in comparison.
So right there when he's talking about something that seemed vast, and it's a city, really big and whatnot, you could say that's heaven, in a way. Because heaven has to be really large, beyond our understanding of large. And there was something where I've heard that heaven is just not just a place of pleasure, not just a place of God and angels and things, and even heavenly creatures, but a place of all positive memories and understanding. So if you take all the memories that are positive for people that are dead and alive, and they're all in heaven, heaven would be enormous. It'd be bigger than the universe itself.
Yet what made it truly alien was not its size, but its design. Buildings rose up from the ground in unfamiliar shapes. Many were low, circular structures with smooth surfaces that glowed faintly, as though lit from within. Among them stood occasional pyramid-like constructions, shimmering with what looked like tinted glass or translucent crystal. From their peaks rose spiral towers, twisting upward into the sky like giant antennas. At the top of each, Alec noticed something remarkable. Enormous orbs, like giant light bulbs, glowing softly and radiating a strange energy. These were not decorative spires. They felt functional, pulsing with purpose. Everywhere he looked, he saw symmetry and balance. The streets curved gently, blending seamlessly into the architecture. There were no hard corners, no cluttered rows of concrete or steel. Instead, the entire city seemed to flow, as if designed with both aesthetics and energy in mind. It was clean, almost impossibly so. There was no sign of decay, no smoke, no pollution. Alec felt as though he was standing in a world where technology and environment had been harmonized, not forced against one another. Even more astonishing was the atmosphere of the place. It wasn't just a city of glass and stone. It seemed alive, humming faintly, as though the buildings themselves were in communication with one another. Later, Alec would recall the impression that the architecture was made from materials unknown to Earth, semi-transparent, resilient, and possibly organic in nature. To him, it felt as if the structures were grown, not built.
So, this is amazing societies explaining where, I mean, it's almost makes you think. A society where buildings can grow out of the ground, where, you know, bio life can confuse with technological life, or in this sense, technological would be alive if it confused with bioorganisms and grow into buildings and all types of things. The technology in a place where all the technology and all the plants and stuff are one, on a place where none of this stuff looks like it's from Earth. It's amazing. This is an amazing story, and this is why I wanted to talk about it a bit, and it still kind of trips me out a bit even hearing it, because like, was he really in an alien society? That's my thing. Even though clearly saying he has been in an alien society, it still goes to the fact that he says that his body was left behind and his spirit went to this place. So, was it like a heavenly place, like I'm trying to say, or was it or okay, let's put it this way: are the aliens connected to a heavenly place? And if so, could it be another heaven, separate from heaven, and yet still in line with heaven and God? This is just a question you have to wonder here, because his spirit is separate from his body. Or, the ultimate, is it an illusion, a fabrication made of stress and mental illness? That is the number one thing that a rational person would try to come to. But let's just say that the rational stuff doesn't work, and this story that he's saying is actually real. Then it changes everything. So it's like, it's up to your opinions and things, but still, you gotta not forget this guy's been gone for 10 days after taking one drive, and who knows how long the destination of the drive was supposed to be, but for 10 days he disappeared, and supposedly this happened, but he had to remember it first, because he had all these headaches and stuff. So it's a crazy story.
Beings who guided him through this alien city moved calmly, showing no sign that they considered it remarkable. To them, this was simply home. To Alec, it was enough to say that the details were too much. He felt like an infant who had entered a technological paradise, where every structure, every pathway seemed to enjoy a subtle hint of meaning or designated purpose. He was led to what he called his own quarters, a home within this city for his interim stay. The rooms inside were simple and elegantly built, with curves instead of corners, brightened with light rather than luggage. The space seemed to alter itself for his requirements, as though the walls themselves responded to his presence. Not luxury by human appreciation, but one that chilled him with its nonchalant perfection. Yet Alex soon realized that his abduction, or invitation, wasn't for sightseeing. The beings made it clear he had been brought here not just to observe, but to learn. This was a deliberate encounter, one in which knowledge would be passed on to him so he could return with it to Earth. And the knowledge they shared wasn't random. It was about Earth's hidden history, secrets humanity was never meant to know.
So this is the part where it gets a little... So this is the part where I say, the video reminds me of another video, and the reason why what they're about to say has to do with all our ancient worlds and how they're all connected, and how every race is truly connected on this toilet Earth, as well as the fact there's secrets there that explain the truth. So this is where everything comes together and makes you go, whoa. You know, it's kind of like that song back in the day, things that make you go, but instead of going, you're going, whoa. This is like, whoa. You know, you're like Joey from freaking, you're like, whoa, you know, from Blossom and shit. You know, like, seriously. Okay, this is the part.
Earth's hidden history revealed. It was within this alien city that Alec met the being who would change everything for him. She called herself Xena, a female among the group. Though her appearance hardly fit human ideas of gender, her presence was calming, her communication gentle yet precise, as though she had been chosen to guide Alec through truths he was not meant to discover alone. Unlike the others, Xena seemed to understand his doubts and fears, reassuring him with thoughts that flowed into his mind like whispers of clarity. Xena explained that Alec's visit was not random. Humanity itself was the reason he had been brought here. According to her, Earth was a unique world, a jewel in the universe, but its history was not what humans had been taught in schools, nor what religions and science books had agreed upon. Humanity, she said, was a designed species, created, shaped, and guided by beings like her people in cooperation with others who came before. She spoke of Cro-Magnon and Homo sapiens not as random outcomes of natural evolution, but as purposeful creations. Cro-Magnon, she said, was one of the first attempts, a vessel designed to carry a second essence, a spirit that could live and learn within a physical form. It was a step in a long experiment, the blueprint for the humanity that would later emerge. Then came Homo sapiens, refined and adapted. This newer form was capable of not only living, but remembering, accessing knowledge across generations, holding the seeds of a greater destiny. Humanity was never meant to be accidental. It was a carefully guided design. But there was a tragedy in Xena's tale. At some point in Earth's past, a darker force had intervened. This force, she claimed, saw humanity's potential and feared it. Humans were on a path toward enlightenment, developing strong spiritual awareness that could rival even the entities who manipulated the stars.
So just right there, with that being said, a main key that I've noticed when you read about different faiths, different beliefs, is that they all talk about enlightenment. They're all talking about some kind of way to achieve perfection through light, through harmony, through understanding the earth and yourself. And enlightenment is what you're going for. You're trying to reach the final level where your mind and your soul become one. Okay? And you're trying to reach that perfection through harmonizing through yourself, the whole and the earth. But the whole thing about it is, there's so much noise, there's so much chaos, there's so much things that separate people's minds that I think they don't even realize the powers and abilities that they have as humans. Humans themselves have a great ability, but lack the knowledge of how to get it, even though it's right in front of their face, through all these hidden texts, through all these ancient things. And I think we lost that a long time ago, and has been pushed away from us through different places and powers that run the whole show. And that's just my opinion, but I believe what they're talking about has some truth in it, even though a little bit more in depth in the way they're explaining it to him, if this is, what he remembers fully.
To stop this progress, the dark force interfered with human development, crippling them at a genetic level. According to Xena, humanity's DNA had been altered, weakened, and deliberately suppressed. Powers that should have been awakened, spiritual abilities, heightened consciousness, deeper understanding, were sealed away. Humans became fragmented, disconnected from the fullness of who they were meant to be. What remained was only a shadow of the greatness they could have achieved. Listening to her words, Alec couldn't help but connect the story to myths he had grown up hearing. Nearly every...
Okay, I had to go back a bit. So, some stupid crap happened, but I had to go back a bit. So here we go.
He had grown up hearing. Nearly every religion and culture described a fall from grace, a time when mankind had been stronger, wiser, closer to the divine, before some event caused them to lose their power. Christianity speaks of the fall of man in Eden. Ancient Mesopotamian texts describe God's shaping and reshaping humanity. Even myths from Greece, India, and the Americas talk of golden ages, when humans were closer to the gods before a catastrophe or betrayal brought decline. Was Xena describing the same story in different words? To Alec, it seemed possible. The parallels were too strong to dismiss. She claimed that Earth's hidden history was not a series of coincidences, but the result of deliberate intervention, both benevolent and malevolent. Humanity had been uplifted, then brought down, and still carried within them the scars of that ancient conflict. Xena said to Alec that a lot of ancient knowledge had not completely vanished. It had been preserved by certain sects, found in various places across the planet, waiting for the right time when humanity could remember again. Sacred places, pyramids, monuments, these are not just structures.
So that right there was what I was talking about in another video, way before I seen this one. Someone mentioned, and once again, aliens were involved in this, and in a different story that blows your mind even more than this one. Okay, because this is like ancient aliens for reals when you hear this other story. And the trip about it is, it all has to do with a boy on Earth. And you're like, what the hell? And these aliens, and once again, the pyramids. So it ends up talking about ancient worlds again, just like this, what is going on right now in this story, and has to do with mankind being tied to these aliens and these things. It's a crazy ass story.
But memory remindings, encoded messages gifted to future generations by the ancients who had walked this earth. The very point was that the awakened humanity awaits, but the dark force is going to delay it for thousands of generations. For Alec, all shocks. He had looked forward to accepting nothing but confusion and fear, albeit he now found that humankind exists as the result of a horrific struggle in a greater cosmic contest. The implications transformed his mind into jelly. If Xena was indeed true, then just about everything that mankind understood about its origins, science, religion, and history was incomplete at best, and deliberately misleading at worst. But Alec's revelations didn't just challenge history. They threatened powerful people here on Earth. Governments and shadows, closing in. When Alec finally began to speak openly about fragments of his experience, he expected disbelief. What he didn't expect was the sudden and unnerving attention of authorities. At first, it was subtle, cars idling at the end of his street that he didn't recognize, unfamiliar faces showing up at places he frequented, and the constant sense of being watched. At night, he felt the pressure of eyes on him, though no one was there. It wasn't just paranoia. He was being followed.
So I'm stopping it there. And I'm stopping it there because if you want to see the rest of this video, go to the website or the YouTube channel, The Secret, and watch the rest of it. But, you know, we covered a lot of it, okay? And the thing about it is, I just want to get to that point where it talk about the ancient world having secrets that could tap into our true essence and our true powers and trying to bring it out. And like I said, there's another video that talks similar thing. Everything that he's saying is similar, and it backs it up, which makes this somewhat of a fact and a truth within the story. And so I think we hit the truth a little bit on this story, and we really will hit the truth once I talk about the other video. And so it makes you think so differently about Earth, mankind, the universe, aliens, and God. And this is just the beginning of it. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you will be able to sit back and hit the truth and find it for yourself. Till next time, peace out.